Greetings from the Antiquities Monuments and Museum Corporation, the Heritage Authority of the Bahamas. We are pleased to launch a new series entitled Bahamas Heritage Holidays. This video series will focus on the key themes and ethos underlining our national days of observance. Today's video shares how National Heroes Day came to be and highlights heroes and heroines of our distant past. On behalf of Team AMMC, it is my pleasure to invite you to journey with us. From the collision of two cultures in 1492 until the early 20th century, the view of Columbus and his quote-unquote discovery was that Columbus was a great man who represented the best of the age of discovery and Renaissance. Indeed, the Bahamas celebrated Columbus with a holiday entitled Discovery Day until 2012. As a wave of decolonization swept the Caribbean and Africa in the 1950s, the views of Columbus and his alleged discovery began to shift. Increasingly, the story of the indigenous people of the Bahamas began to be told, and Columbus began to be seen as a villain, the face of European conquest and colonialism, inaugurated by his landing on San Salvador on October 12, 1492. In the quincentennial year of Columbus's arrival, a movement arose to begin to find a way to celebrate Bahamians and our forebears who played a part in nation formation and independence and development. This movement was a shift from a colonial past to a Bahamian present, and ultimately resulted in the introduction of National Heroes Day in 2013, replacing the celebration of Discovery Day.
I am chairman of the National Heroes Committee that was formed in late 1991. I was recruited really to be chairman of the committee by one Fred Mitchell, who was then leader of the People's Democratic Force, the PDF, and Loretta Butler Turner, who was then a card-carrying vocal member of the Free National Movement. I think it was necessary to say that because they needed someone who was apolitical to run with the ball as leader. We made our debut on Bay Street with what was called a red mass on the 21st of January 1992. We also had another campaign going against the validity that we had ascribed to Christopher Columbus. Rather than to see him as a hero, really to see him as someone who was a villain. And so when we sat down at the cabinet, we quite easily agreed with the cabinet that the Discovery Day ought to be rechristened and named National Heroes Day.
Well, he is a hero because he represents this Akan, or more specifically, a Hunter revolutionary presence that existed throughout the Caribbean and throughout the Americas. Kwamino would have come from Southwest Ghana and come here. His plan was actually to free all people of African descent on the island of New Providence by killing all of the colonists and settlers on the island, beginning with Governor Fitzwilliam. And if we know how the Akan revolutionary influence functioned, his goal was not just for his own freedom, because he had been living as a runaway for quite some time, according to the words of Governor Fitzwilliam. Okay, but this guy's plan was to actually take over the entirety of the island of New Providence and to quote-unquote make it an African kingdom. And in the Bahamas in particular, this is inextricably linked to our predominant national festival known as Junkanoo, which is directly linked to the Ahanta people who, like Kwamino, was an Ahanta who had a direct link here to the Bahamas.
Dick DeVoe is one of the forgotten figures of our history, and here it is. DeVoe was an enslaved man who started a revolt. In 1831, Dick DeVoe hears that freedom is coming, right? So what does he do? He immediately stops work. And the plantation owner, Joseph Hunter, well, he had a problem with that. And Dick DeVoe joined a group of rebels, and Joseph Hunter came to have something to say about it, and he fired a gun at Joseph Hunter. Now, he ended up being executed for that. So here it is, you have Dick DeVoe, who's showing that, look, no, we didn't go quietly into that dark night. What we did was we stood up for what was ours, that freedom. So that's why Dick DeVoe is important.
Well, Prince William, first of all, was a black loyalist who fought on the British side during the American Revolution. And he actually, because of that, was given official certificate of freedom by British officials during the course of the war. Eventually, he was evacuated at the end of the American Revolution, sometime in the early 1780s, to the Bahamas. But in a 1785 advertisement in the Bahamas Gazette, he was listed as a runaway and escapee. And in fact, the notification suggested that not only was he a runaway, but the handsome reward would be given to the person who would secure him. So his status as a free person was tenuous at best. However, he had to fight for his freedom. And by the early 1790s, in a government document, we find that he has, in fact, secured his freedom. So it's like he had to fight for freedom twice. First in the course of the American Revolution, and secondly, coming to a slaveholding society like the Bahamas. More importantly, though, was he was one of the founders of Bethel Baptist. He is in fact listed as one of the persons who purchased the property around 1791, and that could not have happened unless he was a free person, because only persons who were free could actually purchase property. He then becomes a significant figure and founder of Bethel Baptist, becomes one of their primary preachers with the death of Amos Williams, not related.
Helen DeLitt was born in the Bahamas in 1842. She was a public school teacher, and I would consider her a Renaissance woman. Helen DeLitt is important because she made history in Florida by becoming the first Black woman to become a teacher at a grammar school. And she was also the first Black woman to become a teacher at Edwin M. Stanton School in Jacksonville. She was known to be Stephen DeLitt's daughter. She was known to be James Weldon Johnson and his brother Rosamond Johnson's mother. And if you know them, they were the ones who composed and wrote the song Lift Every Voice. But it was her influence on her sons by her love of literature and her love of the European tradition and music that imparted that onto her children and gave them that inspiration and that love of English, that love of music to go and open their eyes and to understand what voices are needed in the community. And they did that through music, they did that through writing, and they did that through their activism.
We hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thank you for journeying with us.